Hi, my name's Richard. Thanks very much for joining me. This is part 4 of the continuing tutorials on the World War II Italy boards. In this episode I'm going to be concentrating in more detail on how I paint and finish the buildings side of the board, so I hope you find it of interest, and thanks for watching. Okay, I thought I'd show you a quick update before we begin, where the board, what the board looks like so far. So you can see here's the rock work which we looked at in the last video, and how we sort of undercoated and started the preparation of that. Now we're looking at the buildings. These have had exactly the same effect done to them. I've washed them over with the spray cans or the spray bottles, just with a loose sort of wash with a bit of dry brushing. You can probably just about see that there's now a colour difference between the two levels, where the building wasn't actually on the board when I sprayed the other washes, so those now need to be matched up. So we'll be looking in more detail at how I do that. Okay, to explain, the buildings were painted separate to the board. I took them away and sprayed like the washes over them, so there is a colour change. So now what I need to do is I need to readdress that and balance that back together again. So I'm just going to go over with the same desert colour that I've used everywhere else. I'm just going to give a dry brush to the fronts of the buildings, over both the bottom and the top. See that inside that the washers have done their job. They've gone in, they've splattered the walls and ran in places, and I've mopped that up. And now I'm just going to clean that up slightly with the sort of desert colour. That just starts to bring out the timber work of the floor and the rubble. Now the rubble's got a lot of tiles in it, so they'll have to be picked out in red or terracotta to bring those out. But you can see that's really starting to come to life. At the moment they're still looking all the same, it's all blending into the board. That's because I've used the same sandy colour throughout the board, which is what I wanted, and I'm going to do the same with the roofs now before going on to the next steps. What I'm really after is to start bringing out the contrast or some highlights within that really nice sort of tiled texture that we've got and we've used on the roofs. Even with something like a roof, it can be lighter at the top, darker at the bottom, to insinuate the fact that the light is hitting it from the top. Okay, once again I'm going to go around now with the airbrush and just tone down some of that orange tile, looking at where I want some of that darkness to come in. It's maybe got dirty on the bottom, the sun's hitting it from the top. I'm doing this with the buildings in place, so I can then blend some of that colour onto the buildings itself, and it all starts to sort of work together then. It's a good idea sometimes to pick up the work and get right underneath, because that's where the shadows are going to be. Okay, so I've turned this board round, and I want to add some, I've added the brown spray, and I want to add some more black. So I'm going to go in finer. I want the impression as if there's been a fire inside, or there's been smoke damage. So I'm just going to go around with the black airbrush a bit more carefully, and do the same with the insides as well. Working up some of those corners. Just want to add a final bit more highlight to the roof tiles. So because we've got to the limit now of where the sand colour can help us out with this, so you're going to have to put in more of a yellow to the mix to give it that real nice, and I'm really only going to touch this on very lightly because I just want this to appear in places. This is really what will make it look quite patchy, and almost the tiles will be individual, because I want to bring out that sort of individual sort of look about them, that they're not all uniform Okay, it's time to have a closer look at some of the building finishing. So I'm really happy with the way the buildings are looking at the moment, but now we need to sort of give them that sort of individual personality. So I'm literally just going to go in and paint in a sort of a washy brown to darken, to help start that process off, to start darkening that block work. And sort of blending a few colours as they go along, so it's not all going to be the same. So I've painted in the stonework with the first colour. Now I want to define the windows in more detail as well. So first thing I'm going to do with those is just give them quite a thin black wash, which I can then dry brush out on the next stage, just to pull out some of that detail that I've put in. So I'm going to put in some, while I've got the black on the go, I'm going to put some black into that stonework I just painted. I'm going to now just lightly dry brush over the block work to give that a little bit more definition. Just lightening up a bit. Now it's got a dark coat underneath, that will pick up the highlight and the dry brush much easier. I also want to pick out the windows and the shutters, so I've mixed up a light cream and I'm just going to dry brush over these as well. Now they've had like a black wash underneath, that will help pick out those details. Now these will be different colour to the colour I'm painting at the moment. I'm just adding a dry brush to pick out the detail. I want to wash over these with different colours, particularly like the doors and things, because that's where doors can actually be more of a distinct colour, like a red door or a green door. So it's a way of adding some different colours into the scene. Okay, you can see that the elements are really starting to come together now, but still we've still got an overall tone for all the buildings, so they're all looking the same sort of sandy brown colour. I've got quite distinctive colour changes. So this one up here is quite sort of orangey compared to this one. It's got a lot of staining falling off the wall, and the differences between these two are quite clear as well. This one's interesting as well because you can see that some of the buildings are actually quite light compared to ones next to them that are quite sort of dark. So we want to do the same with this layout. We want to bring out some different tones really. So we're going to do that now with some washes. So I'm just literally going to start washing over with quite a weak white to start changing that general colour. Now washes are better than painting in solid colours because they'll look much more natural than if you just you know, blocked it out a real strong colour. Once you start the wash, you can then start thinning it actually on the work itself. Some of that whiteness is going to migrate into the rubble, because that's the idea. Some of that rubble has fallen down onto here, and so again I'm not worrying too much or being too careful. Again, I want this to sort of work across the whole piece. So that's now starting to look a lot stronger than it did before. And then we'll do the same with this building here and change some of the balances of the actual building structures. I want you to see me actually applying some of this colour here. This is like a sort of pinky colour that I spotted in one of the photographs, which I quite liked. So I'm just wanted you to see the difference that applying the colour does to the overall effect of the piece. It really does make the buildings have their own sort of character almost, as they would do. That's the whole point of people painting the houses different colours, to distinguish them from their neighbour's house. So you have to be quite brave sometimes to do that. I mean, the buildings looked absolutely fine before I applied that colour, but it's again referring back to that reference picture gave me the confidence that is the colour that I should be going for and looking at. The other thing I noticed from the referenced images was I really liked the sort of staining that was running down a lot of the wall, so I'm now going to put some of that in, and again I'm just going to use a very watered down acrylic and then just let that sort of almost do the work itself and run down these walls, creating these sort of stripy effects, which I thought looked really good. Again, really shows the importance of reference images to give you some ideas about, you know, how to tackle certain things. The church as well. I'm gonna add these quite distinct sort of marks that are running down the walls, almost to the point where it's so wet it's gonna you know run itself down the wall, creating its own pattern and shapes. Right, I think we're almost there with buildings, so we're getting quite close to some of the finishing details. So I thought what would be a nice little added sort of detail would be to add some posters to some of the walls, as it's been occupied by the Germans. So I'm literally just going to stick these printouts that I've printed off the printer. Okay, so I've added these little posters which I've just printed out off the printer. These are great little things to add that bit of realism to a board. Once they've been stuck down, they just need to be weathered in. The other important thing is sometimes you see the white edge of the paper, which is a real giveaway. So you just need to either gently paint that in or weather that in, and they're sitting there quite nicely. So I think overall the board is looking pretty good now. I've added some hotel signs to this building here, which is broken and laid about, and some other posters and things just to give them that extra little detail. I did say I was going to give you some tips on how to finish the board without using an airbrush. So I'm going to use these Model Mates sprays, which are just brilliant for adding in some sort of finer washes across different media. Literally going to spray in some of this, and you can see that the spray is pretty fine, so you can control it really well. And I'm going over the signs, the buildings and everything, and just subtly changing some colours. This is mud brown. I'll go over the roofs as well with this, and the rock work and the road. I just thought I'd do a quick overview of the board as it stands. These two boards, I think these are pretty much finished. I might do a bit more tinkering later on, but I want to make the other two boards come in front of it first before completely finishing the boards, because they will need to sort of match in style and colour. So I'll leave that to the end. This section here I've not completed specifically because I want to build it with the board in front of it to get the two bits to match up. Some of my favourite bits, which are difficult to pick out really. I love the way the sign came out on the hotel. I think that looks really good. Okay, that was part 4. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed these tutorials. Like I said before, they're quite difficult to put together, but I've tried to cover most things, and I hope you have found it really useful. Thank you very much again for subscribing and for watching.